So we're here just coming back into our conversations that we're calling Attempted Intelligence. And what we're going to attempt to do today is take some of the concepts that we've spoken about before, and attempt to apply them to a piece of popular culture that at least you and I have watched. And the reason I say that is because I think the movie came out in about 2006, and what we're talking about is Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. In the years between 2015 and 2017, I attempted to use references towards this movie in groups of adults, or what I would call adults, some of them obviously younger, and some people didn't get the popular culture reference. That being said, I think it's useful because at least it's something that you and I connect on, and we can take Talladega Nights and apply the concepts of teleology, deontology, constructivism, positivism, and postpositivism based on how they may present themselves in something that other people can watch. So you can go and watch the movie, and if you haven't already watched the movie, we're biasing your view of it through our lens. And I wouldn't say that what we're going to do with these concepts is in any way indicative of how the movie was written or performed, but it's something that we can pull from and utilize, right? So the reason I like the movie is because the jokes work on multiple levels.
Yeah.
If you don't get any of the levels, then it's just slapstick and garbage and you hate it. Have you come across people who, when you talk to them about a Will Ferrell movie, they just absolutely hate everything Will Ferrell does?
Well, they just say exactly that. They go, I can't do Will Ferrell movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up because he seems to be a fairly polarizing figure. And the reason I appreciate him is because, and I'll talk about it here when it comes up, but the jokes work on multiple levels, and if you don't see some of those levels, yeah, it's just horrible over-the-top acting, right? Okay, so at least we get that out of the way, that Will Ferrell is polarizing for some people. So for you to listen to this conversation, go watch the movie, and then try to see what we're talking about. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't. But that's not the point. This is for us. And you're watching in order that we can demonstrate what conversations like this look like. Okay, so very, very early in the movie, he's born in a car that's speeding, right? So I was born to go fast, okay? His father walks out. One day his father's in the class on career day, and he says, you know what, Ricky, if you're not first, you're last. And that seems to be the central message to Ricky Bobby throughout his whole life.
It's his entire value system.
Yeah, one statement.
Yeah.
One statement is the entire value system. Now, if that one statement is the entire value system, would you call that constructivism or positivism?
I feel like it's positive, or...
What would it best be represented by?
I just feel like it's positive because it's one central idea. Like
one central idea.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this allows us to see a possible pitfall of positivism, because it is, to him, it is the central idea, right? It feels like positive because no matter who you say it to, well, if you're not first, you're last.
Right.
So he's comparing it to everybody else. Now, realistically, is that a view that everybody holds, or is that a view that Ricky holds?
It's a view that Ricky holds.
Okay, so realistically, it's actually constructivist, but he behaves as if it's the only truth.
Right.
Now, the reason I want to bring that up is because I've talked before about positivism, a constructivist view,
Mm-hmm.
being conflated for a positivist view. So it is clear that that's his worldview and not others. So the place that you see the tension is when he finally gets in the car and he starts winning, and he either wrecks the car or wins the race, right? And then they bring on his buddy Cal Naughton Jr., who's been with him his whole life, and they shake and bake,
Yeah.
right? Do you smell that sweet aroma? So the idea that every once in a while, Cal, before it all blows up, Cal will be like, hey, can I win a race one time? Do you remember the look that Will Ferrell as Ricky Bobby gives him?
Well, I remember he was almost just confused.
Yeah.
He was like, but...
If you're not first, you're last. I know, Ricky, can I win? So again, the tension that should show that there are multiple realities and multiple ways to view this is actually represented by Cal.
Yes.
Because Cal is essentially saying, well, is it okay if I win?
There's other options.
There's other options.
Our team still wins.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Because, again, so we look at the person who ends up, if you analyze them in the right way, like a ignorant fool because they don't see the needs of others.
Right.
Okay, so the constructivist viewpoint, the viewpoint that is completely dependent on you as the viewer, but you hold it as the one true view.
Right.
You end up conflating it, and you harm other people because you won't move off of it. Right. So realistically, it's the truth is dependent on Ricky, right? But because he believes it's the central truth, he behaves as positivism, so it's conflating constructivism and positivism. Now, if we look at the ethical justification for action, okay, Ricky and how he goes about driving and how he goes about trying to succeed, would you call that teleological or deontological?
How he drives and how he goes to succeed. Okay, so I would say,
So remember, he either wins or he wrecks.
Yeah. The way that I'm looking at it, I feel like it doesn't, I don't know, I feel like it could be both, because I'm like...
Okay.
Yeah, because if no matter what way he gets there, he gets to that outcome, right?
Okay.
So we're looking at
Teleology. Yeah.
And then also, if he only has one central idea and he's got to do it, that's his duty. He has to do that thing.
I appreciate that you did that way. Right now, maybe in a more narrow framing, I would argue that his justification is teleological. The ends justify the means. It's outcome-based. Now, the way that you put it and said that it can be argued in multiple ways, when we first had the discussion, I'm talking about people on a sports team. Right? I left it all out there. It's my duty to leave it all out there. Right? So you can actually flip-flop.
Yeah.
Right? So I appreciate that you bring it that way. I would say that for the sake of maybe making a cleaner distinction, early in the movie, it's completely teleological, it's outcome-based, it doesn't matter what he does, he just needs to win, because he's wrecking the car.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you compare, and again, this is for comparison's sake, because it isn't this clean, the way that you brought that up, the way that you made that point, is actually a better reading of it, because it shows that your justification, being teleological and deontological, can flip depending on your needs.
Well, and that's what we said in the other conversation too,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
kind of
So I'm happy that you put it that way. But again, for the purpose of comparing,
Right.
So initially, Ricky is teleological.
Yes.
What's Cal?
Cal. So he's...
What does Cal always do?
Well, Cal always helps him win. Like, he does whatever he needs to do to help Ricky
He helps.
win. Yeah.
So would you say that Cal is more duty or outcome based?
I feel like he's duty.
He's duty based,
Yeah,
and he feels like I'm doing my duty. At some point, I should be rewarded with the win.
Yeah.
And Ricky looks at him like he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
Right. So we can see the tension building.
Yeah.
Right now, what happens is, and this is where the jokes work on multiple levels. So you bring in Sacha Baron Cohen's character, whose name I don't remember, but he's the former open-wheel race car driver from Europe. So there's a lot of European tropes. So there's a lot of culture clash, fish out of water type deal, and interesting things that are had there that some people may not appreciate. But the big deal is that the mechanism is fish out of water, right? So the outsider comes in to teach the lesson,
Right.
So he comes in and Ricky wrecks, right? So first of all, there's the scene where they meet in the bar and he puts Ricky in an arm bar over the pool table, and they have this back and forth. It's like, just say that you like crepes and I'll let you go, right? And he's like, I don't even know what crepes are. It's like, they're those really thin pancakes. Those are delicious. So they're going back and forth.
Right.
And Ricky, this is where you see the flip-flopping of your justification, because he's duty-based towards America, right? So he's like, I'm American and you're one of those weird Europeans.
Yeah.
So he says, he's like, this seems like a really good deal, Ricky. All you have to do is say you like thin pancakes. Because he moves it from crepes to thin pancakes.
Yeah.
Just say you like thin pancakes and he'll let you go. And he's like, no, these colors don't run. So he takes the broken arm.
Yeah.
Right? So you see Ricky as teleological with his driving, deontological with his patriotism towards the country when confronted with a European. Right? So you see how in an individual these things all exist. Then what you get is he gets in a wreck. Now when he gets in a wreck, and he jumps out of the car and he's spinning around and calling for sweet baby Jesus because he's on fire. Right? And you can't see the fire.
Yes. It just looks like he's running around.
Now this is where the jokes work on multiple levels because, unless I'm mistaken, NASCAR runs ethanol. Ethanol flames are not visible.
Right.
They exist, but they're not visible.
Right.
And he has a fire retardant race suit on. Now it doesn't mean that it doesn't start to get up into places where you don't feel the heat, right? So it's at least possible, on the initial wreck, when he believes he's on fire and he's spinning around and then he takes off his race suit and he's just in his underwear, that it's at least possible that he is on fire because it's an ethanol fire.
Right.
Or it could be an ethanol fire, but it might not be. Right? So the first one, they give it to you, and if you know about ethanol fires, it's hilarious because you don't know.
You're in on the joke.
Well, you could be in on the joke, but you might not be.
Right.
Because you're like, is he on fire or is he not?
Yeah.
To people who don't know about ethanol fires, he's just nuts.
Yeah, he's crazy.
He's just being dumb Will Ferrell. But realistically, they leave it to the imagination because it could be an ethanol fire.
Right.
And the second time after the injury and after he gets back in the car and he's driving 20 miles an hour and he gets out of the car and he's doing the exact same thing, like, there's no way this is an ethanol fire. So now, if there's no way that the second one's an ethanol fire, what do you think about the first one?
Well, it's like the possible is like, oh, maybe the first one was fire.
And maybe he's psychologically damaged.
Right.
Maybe the first one wasn't, and he's just a ridiculous human being because look at this character.
Right.
It's like, I can't move my legs. It's like, Ricky, you can move your legs. Don't you say that to me. So you get these multi-layered jokes where if you're not into it, it's really over the top.
Right.
But now, okay, so we've got kind of a positivist or a constructivist position being conflated with positivism. It's like, it is constructivist.
Yeah.
Then what ends up happening is he can't really get back in the car, so he goes back to live with his mom because he's unsuccessful, and Cal has taken his wife, and Cal is trying to ask him if he wants to hang out at his old house, and it's this ridiculous kind of back and forth. Now, his dad comes back on the scene. He finds his dad. His dad comes back on the scene because his dad keeps calling him for pizzas, and he's on a bike because he can't drive.
Right.
He's talking to his dad, and he's like, at one point he says, "Dad, you told me if you're not first, you're last." He's like, "Ricky, you believed me? I was high." So the whole thing, this positivist, this constructivist concept that Ricky felt was positivism, Ricky felt was the one truth that he could hold on to, crumbles. Not only did it crumble through experience, it crumbled because his dad told him, "I was high when I told you that," and it sounded cool.
Right.
So now Ricky has no choice but to say, "Oh, that thing that I held central." So this is a crisis of belief.
Yeah.
And then the way that he gets his confidence back is his dad makes him drive in the car with a mountain lion. So like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you have these narrative devices that allow you to recognize, oh, now Ricky says, that thing that was my central belief, well, it had a level of truth that was useful. So it allowed me to, it's not necessarily put this way, but that central concept, if you're not first, you're last, allowed Ricky to succeed.
Yes.
To strive. It was a belief that he had, and it helped motivate him.
Right.
But it literally was false.
Right.
Because there's way more positions. It's like, but Ricky, there's all kinds of other positions in wrestling.
Right.
So it was useful to him as a device.
As long as he believed that it was true.
But here's the problem. You run into it where you can then have the crisis of faith. Because it is observably not the only truth. So that's the danger in taking your central belief and believing that it's the belief, that it's the truth.
The only truth.
Right? So this is where science comes into play, because we can then observe things over time and say, well, no, if we put this in a different context, it doesn't behave the same way. Right? So we can observe, it's like, yeah, that's a useful belief, but it's not true. So there's a concept that I've heard, the gentleman's name that I initially heard it from, and I don't know if other people use it, but it's Brett Weinstein.
Okay.
And he has a concept that he calls literally false, metaphorically true. So if you're not first, you're last is literally false. Yeah. It's like there are other positions, especially if it's a multi-person race, right? So if it's, let's just say there's only two people in the race. Now here's the argument. If you're not first, you are last. Literally, if there's only two people. Yeah. But also, at the exact same time, observably, if you're not first, you're second.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, wait, how do we square these? We don't absolutely.
Right.
But realistically, observably, in language, in observable things without language, it's a false statement. If you're not first, you're last. But metaphorically, it can be used to drive so much success and so much striving that it has use.
And then it's represented that way in the movie.
Yeah, but when that falls, he can still find success.
Yes.
So he figures out how to drive with the mountain lion in there, and his dad pops something under the car and calls the state troopers, but really all it is Fruit Loops or something like that, or some sort of cereal.
Right.
And then he realizes it, and his dad had motivated him, and he's like, it's inside of me. The motivation's inside of me. So this is where we can talk about locus of control.
Right.
So Ricky's locus of control, although it was an internal belief, it was given to him from the outside by somebody who thought was important and he had a fractured relationship with. So his motivation, although a centrally held belief that was literally false, metaphorically true, if you're not first, you're last, it was an external locus of control. Because what was he trying to do? Was he trying to win for Ricky? Or was he trying to win to try to find a way to make a relationship with his dad?
Well, and really, it seems like the second one, because his dad was the one who told him that. Like,
and what did he do at every race?
I can't remember.
What did he do with tickets at every race?
I can't remember.
He left tickets for his dad at every race.
That's right.
And everybody, they always left him, and he never came.
No, never came.
Right? So, the idea is that if you're not first, you're last. If it's a centrally held belief, you can make the argument that it's an internal locus of control, but in this case, we can see that it's an external locus of control, because he's controlled by this thing that was given outside of him.
Right.
Now, that falls away. And then he finds it within him. He has the internal locus of control, and he ends up being far more satisfied.
Yes.
Right? So he ends up having a relationship with the assistant that he could never remember her name, and she was just much nicer, and she wasn't necessarily just after the
money and the lifestyle.
Well, not even the money and the lifestyle, but the proximity to power.
Right.
Right. So you can see it in his first wife immediately. So he's winning all these races. She likes him in relation to that. He loses. He wrecks, and the same day she gets in a relationship with his buddy.
Yeah.
Because he's now closer to power. So she's closer to power because he is.
Right.
And that's one of those things where you can look at it and say that they're using stereotypes and placing that on a female, right? Where that's a bit of a problem, because I actually happen to know a lot of males that do that. They're yes people, they're yes men to people in power because they just want to be close to it.
Right.
So it's a bit of a challenge because they show it with women, and society can tell you that that's what women will do.
Right.
They'll chase the money and the power, but men do it too, because some of them, how else would they get it?
Right.
So that's interesting, at least to me. Right now, you get that kind of internal versus external. He goes to the internal locus of control, right, after he's broken, and now all of a sudden he's internally motivated and he's doing fine. He's got a more satisfying relationship. He's worked through all his demons.
All right.
And it's like, wait a minute. So not now, again, this is not written this way. I don't have any proof that the writers set out to do this.
Kind of, yeah.
But when I put my lens on it, and here's one of the problems with having a lens, is that it may have no relation to the intention that the creator had.
Right.
It's just a way that you can read it, make sense of it, wield it, and maybe help teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
So the fallback in what we're doing here, or really more of what I'm doing, because I'm bringing this forth,
Right.
is that my lens can be the thing that makes it more difficult for me to understand the intended message. So I could be falling for the failure to ignore previously learned knowledge.
Right.
Right? So it's like, no matter what happens, you're always prey to the things that you already know.
Right.
You are prey to their limitations.
That was an excellent full circle, by the way.
So you're always prey to their limitations. But what that unfortunately does for me is strengthen the position of the postpositivist.
Yeah.
So, there are multiple human experience. There's unquestionably multiple realities.
Right.
There are some things that observably over time we can identify that are stable, right? That are true for me, true for a tree, and true for a cockroach, right? Like no matter who's observing, it's true.
Right.
But I am human. I have limitations. So again, it further enforces the concept of the postpositivist, right? So the fact that we can go through something that anybody else can watch and pull these concepts out says or at least acts as an example of how you can apply these lenses to almost anything, right? Especially something that has more information in it or more data points.
Right.
You can apply these and you can see their strengths and their weaknesses and how you fall prey to them, or how I fall prey to them. All right, so is there anything else about that movie that you can think of that would be an example of positivism, constructivism, postpositivism, deontology, teleology, internal locus of control, external locus of control?
Well, I was thinking the only thing that kind of stuck out was the kids.
Okay. I'm sitting here in my pee pants right now.
Well, and that's the thing where the thing that brought Ricky to the place where he was, he wanted to represent that in his kids, so he taught them the same things. He's like,
yeah.
And I think it was, I can't remember if it was really early on in the movie, but the kids were back talking to mom or something.
And the grandfather.
And it's like, you're gonna let your grandkids talk to your mom like that? And he's just like, yes, yeah. Yes, that's what winners do. Winners do whatever they want to do.
Yes.
Right? And it's just kind of, reinforcing that whole, that whole main central idea, and bringing them up to do the exact same thing, but again, on this kind of false idea.
Yeah. So, and then when the crisis of faith comes in, he's able to transmit the change that he goes through to his kids with the help of his mom.
Right.
Right. The fact that one of the children's name is Walker and the other is Texas Ranger. it's the amount of low-level humor that's there, but the fact that you can, in a comedy like that, you have a crisis of faith. So the children are going to not necessarily learn what you say, but learn what you do.
Right.
Right. And then they see it in their father when he goes through the crisis of faith and change, and the grandmother just kind of, roughs them up a little bit in maybe a loving way, I don't know.
Right.
But the fact that you can see all of these things in here is an interesting point. But again, you have to remember that when you go through these exercises, you have to understand, or it's beneficial to understand, when you run up against a wall with them. Yes. So when you bring up the flip between deontology and teleology in Ricky's initial motivation, or justification rather,
right.
His initial justification, it shows you that there is a problem. Right? You have a hard time making a clean argument, which is why I attempt to make some delineation to make a clean argument, right. And while recognizing that it's not clean, right?
Recognizing that it's not clean.
So hopefully the example that can come out of a conversation like this is that you can use all of these, right, on something that anybody here can watch. Not only can you use them, you are going to learn their strengths and weaknesses as you do it.
Right.
And you have to, or not, you don't have to. Because never have to is always a weird statement. If I say to my daughter, you have to, she looks at me, and you don't have to. Yes, but it would be in your best interest. Right? So it is in your best interest to understand that no matter what concept you wield, it's almost by its nature of being communicated by a human has to have flaws. Right? Therefore, recognize those flaws, do your best to minimize them, and enjoy your day if you can. Like don't think everything is fast and absolutely firm and only one way. Even if it is something that's a stable phenomenon that can be observed by anybody. Right? Just be careful, right? Which is what brings me back to the concept of the appropriate level of uncertainty. Not uncertainty that paralyzes you, but uncertainty that might allow you to make good decisions. And
at least be open.
Yeah, at least be open. Yeah. Not, I'm open-minded. I really dig horoscopes. No, that's not exactly, you're saying the right words, but you're not doing the right things.
Right.
So the hope is that in conversations like these, not only do we bring forth the concepts, we show how to use them, we show how to run into their boundaries, and we model that behavior. Right? So that was this attempt at intelligence using Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. We're probably going to do this again with other movies and try to make the case, especially for why certain humor works at multiple levels. And if you don't get all of the levels, you don't have the details to understand the joke, you're going to miss it. That's okay. You don't have to like it, but there are other levels there. So we're probably going to do something like this again. So there you go. Enjoy your day.